The shocking truth about Colonel Sanders. Dark secrets behind Kfc'S successful rise revealed now. In the heart of the American South, in a tiny, crumbling house that looked like it belonged in a ghost story, lived a man with secrets darker than the fried chicken he sold. Colonel Harland Sanders wasn't just a beloved figure. He was the face of a culinary empire. But beneath that warm smile and iconic white suit lay a life filled with bizarre twists and chilling mysteries. People didn't just line up for his chicken. They craved the manna story, a tale woven with fear, pain, and unimaginable ambition. The moment the sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie shadows across the cracked sidewalks, the smell of frying chicken filled the air like an enchanting spell. But there was something unsettling about it too. Whispers floated through the streets, rumors about a secret recipe that was less about spices and more about a deal with the devil himself. The locals spoke in hushed tones, their eyes darting around as if the colonel himself might appear, wreathed in a peculiar ethereal glow, ready to serve up more than just chicken. And then, there were the reports, strange disappearances of would-be competitors who dared cross Sanders' path. Their fate was sealed in the newspaper articles that bound the town in fear. How do you explain such boldness in a man who seems so charming? One resident wondered aloud, tightening her grip on her purse as if she could ward off any lurking evil. The truth was, Sanders had a cunning edge, a sly glint in his eye that hinted at man not simply seeking fame, but supreme power. His fried chicken became the vehicle of his ambition, taking over small towns and thriving cities alike, while his competitors vanished into thin air. But things grew darker. One evening, when the streets were wrapped in silence, a figure wearing a tattered fedora crossed the colonel's path. It was a former business partner who held secrets, dark secrets that could unravel the very foundation of Kfc's success. The encounter lasted mere moments, but it sent shockwaves through the colonel's carefully constructed empire. What was said in that suspenseful exchange could change everything. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the night cloaked the town, sparks of treachery lit up like fireflies, weaving a web of intrigue around the colonel. What kind of secrets was he willing to kill for? What lengths would he go to keep the truth hidden? The chicken might have been crispy, but it was the twists of fate that were about to fry everything. Because in this tale, the question loomed like a thunderstorm waiting to break. Was Colonel Sanders simply a master of fried chicken, or was he something far more sinister? The air turned electric as the last words hung in the night like a noose. The colonel, steeled with resolve, stared into the eyes of his former partner, a spectral figure cloaked in shadows. The silence that followed felt fraught, as if the world had paused to witness their fateful exchange. "What do you want, Howard?" Sanders snapped, his voice slicing through the dark tension. His usual charm dipped into an icy edge. There it was again, a glimpse of the predator hiding behind the benevolent face he wore for the world. "Just the truth, Colonel," Howard replied, stepping closer, the brim of his fedora casting a shadow over his face. "You know better than anyone. It's the truth that sets people free. Or binds them forever." The colonel's chest tightened. Howard was a ghost from a past he'd rather forget. A reminder of the dirty laundry he'd kept hidden. For years, they had schemed and plotted together, building an empire on fried chicken and lies. But Howard had chosen a darker path. He had uncovered secrets that could shatter Sanders' carefully polished facade. "Keep your mouth shut," Sanders growled, fear simmering just beneath his bravado. "Or you'll find out how deep my commitment to family extends to the grave." Howard smirked, defiance alive in his glare. "You may think you can intimidate me, but I know things. The townsfolk whisper, 'Colonel, They're piecing together the puzzle you think you've hidden. The two men stood locked in a battle of wills, neither willing to yield, the air growing heavier with each second that passed. Sanders felt a knot tighten in his stomach, something more than anger stirring inside him. It was fear, the kind that wraps around your heart like a vice, squeezing tighter with every moment. Don't threaten me. You wouldn't be the first to come knocking seeking a payday. The colonel scoffed, but he could feel cold sweat trickle down his spine. Payday? You underestimate me. Howard's voice dripped with menace. You've made enemies, Colonel. They're hungry for justice, hungry for answers. And all it takes is one slip up from you, just one. Sanders' grip on the darkness that surrounded him slipped for a second. Howard had stepped into a realm he dared not acknowledge. He wasn't the only one full of ambition. There were those lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to pull the trigger on secrets buried deep. The night draped the two adversaries in foreboding silence. Across the dimly lit streets, a stray dog howled, echoing their unspoken fears. In that moment, Sanders envisioned his empire crumbling. Chickens burned, businesses shuttered, and friends turned foes. Then it seems we have a problem, Sanders finally said, a sinister calm returning to his voice. But problems are often best solved in silence. And with a swift motion, he reached for the pocket of his jacket. The faint glimmer of metal caught Howard's eye, and a gasp escaped his lips. The tension fractured as the shadows grew thicker around them. What are you? The colonel's smile twisted unsettlingly, but before he could respond, a flash of movement burst forth from the nearby alley, a figure emerging from the darkness that sent shivers down both men's spines. In an instant, a third party was now involved, and Sanders felt the chill of dread wash over him. Who was this new player, and how did they fit into the web of murky secrets? The tension fizzled like heated oil just before the fall. Sanders knew the stakes were now higher than ever. As the unknown figure drew closer, the question hung dangerously in the air. Would the stunning truth unravel him, or would he succeed in silencing everyone for good? The colonel had only moments to decide before the night devoured him whole. But little did he know, the secrets were not done spilling yet. Who else had come to reclaim their part of the truth? The shadows shifted as the figure stepped into the light. Sanders' breath hitched in his throat. It wasn't just anyone. This was Amanda, the reporter he had kept out of his affairs for years. Her notebook was clutched tightly in one hand, while the other held a small camera that glinted ominously in the glow of the street lamp. She looked from Sanders to Howard, her expression a mix of determination and apprehension. I knew it wouldn't be long before the past caught up with you, Colonel, she said, her voice steady but laced with disbelief. Doesn't the truth have a way of surfacing? Stay out of this, Sanders barked, anger igniting within him. His instincts urged him to back down, to retreat into the cozy lie he had built for himself. But the encroaching swirl of danger kept him rooted to the spot. Didn't you think I wouldn't come looking? Amanda pressed on, closing the gap between them. You can't just bury everything forever. And this is where it stops, Howard. She focused on the man whose secrets were as thorny as his smile. Howard raised an eyebrow, amusement dancing in his gaze. And what do you think you can do here? You're outmatched and outgunned. He flicked a wrist toward Sanders, who was still poised with tension. The colonel's pulse raced, the implications of Amanda's presence sinking in like a stone. Why hadn't he seen this coming? She was a sharp one, digging for the truth, relentlessly pursuing the angles of his story that were conveniently forgotten. The very angles that could unravel his life and everything he had built. Back off, all of you, Sanders warned, lowering his hand slightly, revealing the weapon that gleamed momentarily before he quickly concealed it. This has nothing to do with you, Amanda. She flinched but stood her ground. You don't get to decide who it affects anymore. You've dragged your secrets into the streets, and now people are talking. I know what happened, the fraud, the threats, the manipulation. It won't just disappear because you wish it away. The atmosphere bristled, as though the night itself held its breath, waiting for the storm that might break. Tension crackled in the air, heavy enough to pull the stars from the sky. People are going to know the truth, she declared boldly. The patterns of deceit you thought you could control are starting to feather out in every direction. You can't stop it. The colonel looked to Howard, who was watching with an almost glee, a hawk circling a wounded rabbit. Sanders had one short moment of realization the truth didn't just bind. It also clawed its way to the surface, even if the hands that brought it forth risked great danger. Suddenly, a loud squawk pierced the silence, the stray dog's howl echoing like a siren. A pair of headlights flooded the alley's mouth, illuminating the trio in an eerie glow. A car had pulled up, perhaps on Amanda's cue, or maybe it was a flash of fortune or a final endgame. Flashing lights sped toward them, and Howard's grin faltered just a fraction. "Now what do we do, Colonel?" Amanda asked, courage hidden behind her bravado. Sanders weighed his options as the sound of running footsteps began to approach, heart pounding like war drums. "Let us hope for your sake, Amanda, that you can outrun the truth," he muttered, a grim smile breaking through the panic. Maybe this was it. A chance to turn the tide and escape this tightening noose. The phone buzzed in his pocket, vibrating with unanswered messages, the calls for help he had ignored. But he couldn't afford to think of that now. Not when everything hung on the edge of chaos. As the headlights drew closer, illuminating the anticipated chaos, Sanders made a choice. One that would shatter others' expectations of the colonel they thought they knew. "Get ready," he said quietly. "This won't end without bloodshed." And then he started moving, making a decision that would thrust them all deeper into a game none of them were truly prepared to play. Where the truth would lead remained uncertain, but its call was undeniable. Would they be ensnared, or find salvation in what was about to unfold? The car screeched to a halt, tires skidding on the asphalt. A plume of dust rose around it like a shroud, and the headlights cast long shadows, stretching menacingly across the alley. Sanders felt the pit of his stomach tighten. "Hurry," Amanda urged, glancing over her shoulder at the approaching vehicle. She didn't need to tell him twice. Adrenaline surged through his veins as he scanned for an exit. Howard stepped forward, his eyes glittering with a mix of mischief and malice. "This isn't the time to be a hero, Colonel," he sneered. "You know what you'll have to do." The running footsteps drew nearer, echoing louder, firm and rapid, melding with the tension in the air. They were coming for them, and there was no predicting whether they were friend or foe. "Stop!" A voice barked from the shadows, followed by another pair of headlights flickering on from the side streets. It was a cop, and with the police came consequence, a colliding force against the night's malevolence. "Great," Amanda breathed, frustration rippling through her. "Just what we needed, a party crasher." "We'll use it," Sanders said, voice low but urgent. He caught Howard's eye, noticing a silent recognition passing between them. They were trapped, but he needed to play both sides. "Get down now." They ducked behind the nearest dumpster just as the police officers leaped from their car, guns drawn. The faint smell of garbage mingled with fear as Sanders crouched low, his heart racing faster than ever. "Hands up," the officer shouted, sweeping the alley with a flashlight. The beam darted back and forth, illuminating the shadows where secrets hid. "This is the police. Show yourselves. Is this how it ends?" Amanda whispered, her breath shaky. "Caught between lies and bullets?" "No," Sanders said with fierce conviction. "Not like this." He reached into his pocket and fished out his phone with trembling fingers. The screen lit up, revealing dozens of missed calls. They were phantom voices, his past reaching out. None of them mattered now. They would have to wait. The officer's footsteps grew closer. Sanders could almost feel the echo of the command reverberating through him, tugging at old instincts honed by years in the field. He turned to Amanda, her features set with determination, a defiant fire in her gaze. "Listen to me," he said, urgency creeping into his voice. "When I make my move, you need to run. You might have a chance to get out of here." She opened her mouth to object, but he held up a hand. "No, this is my mess. I can't let you get caught up in it." Before Amanda could respond, Howard leaned out from behind the opposite side of the dumpster. He grinned, eyes glinting with something dangerous. "You've always had a flair for theatrics, Sanders. But let us be honest, you can't just twist the night in your favor. The truth is already coming down on you like the sword of Damocles. The officers were closing in, hands steady on their weapons. Sanders felt backed into a corner, realization dawning like shadows creeping over the horizon. This wasn't just about him anymore. Their choices could alter the fates of all involved. On 3, Sanders counted softly, more to himself than anyone else. 1, 2, but before he could finish, the city exploded into commotion. A piercing siren cut through the air as another car turned the corner, crashing into the police vehicle, metal screeching like a banshee-esque wail. Lights fluttered like manic fireflies against the darkness. "Now!" he shouted, and without waiting for a response, he bolted forward. The wild pulse of his heart echoed in his ears. What he hadn't expected was the terrifying realization that the chaos only began with the crash. Out of the wreckage, figures emerged, cloaked in darkness and intent, and they weren't coming to negotiate. With panic trailing just behind him, Sanders felt dread. Who were these people and what did they want? Shouts erupted, clarity fractured, and as fate twisted once more, Sanders wrestled with the truth that might claim him. Was this collision of lives fated, or was there still time to find an escape? The night was far from over, and the answers waited in the shadows, lurking still. The world around Sanders blurred as he sprinted ahead, his muscles screaming in protest. Behind him, the sounds of chaos erupted like an angry storm. Amanda's shout pierced through the din, but he couldn't risk looking back. The figures emerging from the wreck were dressed in dark clothing, their intentions unreadable. They moved with purpose, swarming towards the scene like vultures drawn to a feast. Gunshots rang out, echoing off the brick walls of the alley. An officer yelled, and car doors banged violently shut as cops scrambled for cover. The air thickened with grit and fear, a suffocating reminder of how swiftly the night had spiraled out of control. "Where are you going?" Howard hissed, his voice a darkly amused whisper. Sanders felt the weight of his gaze, but he couldn't afford to slow down. He skidded to a halt and turned towards Amanda, who was breathing heavily, fear flickering in her eyes. "We need to move. Now. Those people. They're not normal," she stammered, pointing. The chaos around them suddenly crystallized into something more horrifying. The figures rising from the wreckage didn't just look dangerous, they looked feral, eyes wild and frantic. A pack of wolves unleashed on the unsuspecting. "Like a goddamn nightmare," Sanders muttered, mind racing. Back in the alley, he gestured towards a narrow opening between 2 buildings, his instincts kicking in. They could find shelter there while gathering their wits. The shadows seemed more welcoming than the blinding chaos as they sprinted towards the crack in the wall. A loud crash sent a rock-hard wave of cold panic through him. The dark figures were drawing closer, moving stealthily, weaving through the falling debris like ghosts hunting in the night. "Don't look back," he yelled again, desperation pushing him forward. They stumbled into the opening, pressing against the cool brick. The flickering lights from the chaotic scene illuminated the fear in Amanda's eyes. "What do we do now?" Sanders crouched, catching his breath, scanning the crowded alley. The cops were in full retreat, and the sound of sirens wailed in the distance, drowned out by the wild laughter echoing from the newcomers. The air crackled with tension. "Every second we waste is a second they have to find us. Do you even know who they are?" Amanda's voice shook. "What do they want?" "Maybe we're the ones that don't want to find out," he replied, reluctant to voice the truth. An unsettling thought gripped him. These didn't seem like random thugs or desperate criminals, they felt coordinated, almost like a hunting party. Just then, the sound of a soft thud drew his attention. His heartbeat quickened. He turned sharply, peeking through the gap, clenching his fists. The figures had split up, canvassing the area with a methodical precision that sent chills running down his spine. What had he gotten them into? His mind whirled, threading through their earlier briefings, scouring the blurred edges of his memory for anyone that could fit the bill. A low growl emanated from the shadows, snapping him back. The figures were close now. They were no longer merely searching, they were hunting. "Sanders!" Amanda hissed, a tremor in her whisper. What if they find us? They'll kill us, all of us. He felt a creeping dread curling tight around his chest. He needed to make a decision. Was it time to confront these beasts of the night? Or would they have to run blindly into the dark once more? As the dreadful realization settled deep within him, Sanders prepared to step out of their hiding spot. Time felt frozen, and yet the world outside unspooled chaotically. But something about the shape of one figure made him pause, turned, locking eyes with him. And in that instant, he felt a visceral recognition wash over him. Wait, he breathed. I know that face. Who was this figure, and how deep did the connection run? The urgency to find out clawed at him. And just like that, the night turned sharper. This wasn't over yet. The figure stepped closer, shadows dancing across its face as recognition blinked through Sanders' muddled thoughts like a broken light bulb. It was a face he hadn't seen in years, a memory buried under layers of dirt and time. His old partner, Caleb. How had he gotten tangled in this madness? Caleb, Sanders gasped, barely audible over the chaos. His heart thudded violently against his chest. Amanda shot him a confused look, her brow furrowing in fear. Are you sure? She whispered urgently, pulling him back from the edge of his revelation. Sanders barely nodded, his mind racing. Memories flooded back. Late-night stakeouts, shared laughs over cold coffee, the feeling of trust that had once anchored him in a world where loyalty meant something. But now, against the backdrop of chaos, Caleb's eyes held something darker, a flicker of resentment buried beneath the surface. Sanders. A voice rang out, gravelly and cold. It wasn't Caleb speaking, but another figure who had joined him, wearing an unmarked jacket. What a surprise to see you here. The resemblance was striking. This was Caleb's twin brother, Marcus, a former cop turned loose cannon. The tension thickened, wrapping around them with the same tightness as the alley walls. Marcus, Sanders said, barely able to grasp the implications. What's going on here? Amanda's voice rose slightly. Who are they? Sanders took a deep breath. They're not just anyone. Amanda, they were part of my life back when I thought there was order in this chaos. But I was wrong. Seems you still don't understand the game, do you? Marcus's lips curled into a cruel smile. This is a whole new world, Sanders, our world. And it's eating you alive. You're in over your head. A grating laugh echoed behind him, and Sanders couldn't feel much other than the rising panic. Amanda pressed against him, her breath trembling, urging him to act. Don't you see? Caleb's eyes were wild, betraying a split loyalty. They're hunting for something much bigger than you realize. What do you mean? Sanders urged, stepping closer, his voice hoarse. We're on a mission, Sanders. Caleb snapped, his raw emotion spilling over. And it doesn't involve you anymore. You should have stayed away from this place, this life. Mission? What mission? Sanders probed, desperation drenching his voice. The growls from the lurking figures outside intensified, echoing his sense of foreboding. He felt the weight of choices he'd made. Choices he'd never anticipated would lead him here. The last thing he wanted was to become collateral damage in a dark game that twisted life's worth into something monstrous. There are forces at play that you couldn't possibly comprehend. Marcus sneered. Join us or get out of the way. This night isn't turning back. Suddenly, the crack of footsteps echoed, and Sanders knew they were running out of time. The shadows thickened, pressing closer, and the growls melded into something far more menacing, a horrible understanding of what hid behind those dark figures. What do you say, old friend? Marcus taunted gently. Care to team up with us again? Or will you abandon your former partners to the wolves? Sanders met Amanda's wide eyes. Fear was painted all over her face. The choice loomed, heavy with life or death stakes. Get ready, Amanda, he barked, adrenaline surging through his veins. We have to make a choice, fight or run. With fears clawing at his mind, he had to act fast. But who could he trust now? And could he even trust himself anymore? As the growls grew nearer, a flicker of doubt threatened to unravel everything. Would heading into the fray reveal the truth they so desperately needed? Or would it be the end of them both? The darkness was closing in, and time was running out as Sanders braced himself for the storm ahead. What haunting truths lay ahead? Would he risk everything to find out, or would he lose it all? Time seemed to stretch, the air thick with unspoken words and shifting allegiances. Sanders stood there, his heart pounding, caught between the familiar faces of Caleb and Marcus, who once represented brotherhood but now stood on opposite sides of a chasm filled with darkness. Sanders, this isn't like before. You don't know what we're up against, Caleb pleaded, although his voice trembled with the undercurrents of fear and anger. Sanders' eyes darted between him and Marcus, trying to read the truth in their expressions. What had happened to the loyalty they once shared? The life they built was tarnished by secrets. What mission could possibly justify this chaos? Amanda shifted beside him, her body tense. We can't just stand here. They're coming. And indeed they were. The growls from the figures outside morphed into something grotesque, sounding a primal warning. They were more than just shadows. They embodied a menace that coiled tightly around his throat, cutting off rational thought. You're right, Amanda, Sanders finally said, his voice steadier than he felt. We need a plan. But what can we trust? I can help you. Caleb's desperation shone through, breaking the coldness of Marcus' presence. I swear I can protect you. Just listen. Marcus scoffed, stepping closer. The light from a flickering street lamp highlighted the jagged features of his face. And follow his foolishness? Don't let nostalgia blind you, Sanders. You and Amanda are just pawns in this game, little pieces to be sacrificed. A wave of anger seized Sanders. He stepped forward, pushing back against the fear clawing at him. A pawn is still a piece on the board. I'm not afraid to play, Marcus. It's just a question of who I can trust with my life. Before Marcus could respond, a violent crash echoed from the alley's entrance, as something large barreled into view, a creature drawing nearer, its eyes glowing with primal hunger. Panic surged in Sanders' chest as the truth surprised him. They were not merely hunted, they were being cornered. Now see what you've done, Caleb shouted, but panic rose in Marcus' eyes as the shadows began to congeal into solid forms, grotesque bodies emerging from the darkness. We fight, Marcus yelled, the bravado seeping back into his words, but it felt deceiving. Sanders felt Amanda's hand grip his arm, grounding him in the chaos, her eyes wide and fierce. Together, she urged, and Sanders couldn't help but nod. They had to stand strong together, or the darkness would swallow them whole. Time blurred, adrenaline pumping through their veins, and a whirlwind of chaos erupted. The figures charged forward, a horde of beasts with unspeakable intent. Sanders felt a determination rise within him, clumsy but fierce. Stay close to me, he shouted to Amanda, and they rushed toward the barest flicker of light flashing ahead. But the shadows wouldn't relent, clawing at them, determined to drag them into the abyss. Just as they reached a break in the chaos, a glaring truth crystallized within him. Caleb was far from the man he used to know. Caleb, which side are you on? Sanders yelled amidst the roar of chaos. Are you with us or against us? Caleb hesitated, a flicker of conflict wrinkling his forehead. I have to do this. Do what? Betray us? With a howl, a chaotic thrum slammed into the walls of the alley, and suddenly the figures paused, their movements stilled, as if a dark command had silenced their charge. Run! Marcus shouted, but was it too late? A sinking dread filled Sanders as he began to piece everything together. This was bigger than he imagined. Caleb was caught, held hostage by the very mission he assumed he could control. A dark plan designed not only against them but maybe against the very fabric of his own soul. And then, a loud crack of thunder broke through, shaking the ground beneath them. A single whisper fell through the noise. You shouldn't have come back. As darkness lurched forward again, it left Sanders teetering on the edge of despair, knowing that the real battle was only about to begin. What awaited them in the heart of this haunting darkness? Would it tear them apart or forge an unbreakable bond amidst the chaos? Sanders felt a surge of urgency as shadows writhed around him, each thickening tendril a reminder of how quickly everything had spiraled out of control. We have to move now, he shouted, uncertainty clawing at the edges of his voice. The feral growls resumed their menacing crescendo, flooding the alley with an overwhelming sense of dread. Beside him, Amanda pulled at his sleeve, her gaze darting between Marcus and Caleb. "What do we do? They're everywhere. Get to the light," Marcus yelled, his voice reverberating against the alley walls. He nodded towards a flickering glow at the alley's end, barely visible through the dense fog of darkness. "We need to reach it before he could finish." A mass of shadows lunged at them, twisting and shrieking, eager to drag them into the abyss. Sanders' heart raced as he leaped forward, one eye on Amanda, who stayed glued to his side, adrenaline fueling her every move. "Go!" he screamed, propelling himself into the fray while behind him, he could hear Caleb's panicked breathing. "Trust me." Heavy claws skittered against the asphalt, echoing like haunting drumbeats in his mind. They were surrounded, trapped in this warped sense of reality. For every step he took towards the light, the shadows retaliated, reaching out as they slithered closer, aiming to ensnare them. "Sanders! Amanda!" Caleb's voice was a mix of desperation and authority, an intense battle in his tone. "You don't understand. We're all just pieces in shut up." Marcus shot back, cutting Caleb off. "We don't have time for your twisted bullshit." In that instant, a creature pounced, its claws just inches from Caleb's throat. Instinctively, Sanders spun, narrowly deflecting the strike with a trashcan lid. The clang echoed grotesquely off the alley walls, admiration sparking within him at the quick reflexes but horror washing over as he saw Caleb's expression. Fear turned to rage in an instant, casting any sense of solidarity into the shadows. "Come on," Sanders shouted, kicking off the ground. They propelled deeper into the chaos, driven by an array of primal instincts colliding inside them: fear, loyalty, betrayal. As they neared the flicker of light, a wave of energy surged through the air. The dark figures momentarily hesitated as if instinctively aware of their retreat. "Do you believe him?" Amanda yelled over the tumult, her voice a cocktail of hope and doubt. "Does it matter?" Sanders shot back. "We need to escape first." They lunged forward, each breath growing heavier as the darkness swirled and lashed at their heels, hungry for flesh and despair. And then, just as they reached the threshold of safety, a massive figure materialized before them, cloaked in shadows, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. "Foolish children," the figure hissed, slow-moving tendrils of darkness curling around it. "You think you can run without knowing the truth?" Sanders froze, the threat hanging thick in the air as he gestured for Amanda to step back. The massive figure leaned closer, eyes narrowing in on him, and Sanders could feel the tug of memory, faded whispers from the past that threatened to resurface, dragging him down into despair. "Who are you?" he demanded, grounding himself against the wave of panic rising again. A chilling laugh rippled through the dark, a sound layered with the worth of desperation and loss. "Your connection to the shadows runs deeper than you know, Sanders. But your time for revelations is short." The darkness hungers, and it won't wait long. The air felt alive, pulsating with foreboding, and Sanders took a step back, heart pounding. The figure's presence was terrifying, binding them in a web of confusion as the darkness pressed forward around them, threatening to consume everything in its path. A terrifying thought crossed Sanders' mind. What other secrets lay buried deep within this cursed illusion? "Get ready," Marcus shouted, breaking the hold of fear. "Whatever comes next, we fight." And they charged into the unknown, a surge of hope flickering amidst the labyrinth of shadows. But what lay in wait beyond the light? The answer could fracture their already tenuous bonds forever, no longer just a fight for survival, but a battle against the darkness that threatened to rip them apart from within. Could they uncover the truth before it was too late, or would the shadows claim them all? Sanders charged ahead, his heart pounding like a war drum in his chest. The monstrous figure loomed, the tendrils of darkness coiling around its form like snakes waiting to strike. He could feel Amanda's fear radiating behind him, a tangible thing pressing down on them, urging him to be the protector he never thought he'd have to be. "Marcus, what now?" he shouted, dodging another swipe from the shadows. The dim light flickered uncertainly as if reflecting their wavering chances for survival. "Stick together," Marcus barked, grasping Amanda's arm to pull her along while veering away from the Shadow's reach. "We keep moving and we don't stop until we're out of here." But the darkness was relentless. Tendrils snaked across the ground, reaching out like long arms, desperately wanting to pull them into the abyss. Sanders felt the cold energy hitting his back, a bristling warning that made every nerve in his body tingling. Caleb, still struggling with the terror that gripped him, stumbled. "Wait, I can no time," Sanders retorted, grabbing the back of Caleb's jacket and dragging him along. It was a scramble now, a frantic race that threatened to consume their very souls. The shadows seemed to shimmer and swirl, coiling into new forms, new threats, grinning creatures with hollow eyes and razor fangs. They were alive, hungry. Fear clawed at Sanders' insides, a growing realization that their journey had become a descent into chaos. And just like that, it hit him, the flickers of memories the shadow figure had teased earlier. Secrets buried, connections forgotten. The truth felt like an anchor dragging him deeper into the darkness, echoing a long-ago life he thought had been left behind. What if this was about more than survival? What if he was meant to face something far more sinister? "Keep going," Marcus shouted, just in front of them as the group barreled toward the scattered light ahead. It was a beacon of hope, but could it be a trap? Suddenly, a bone-chilling laugh erupted from the shadows behind them. "You think you can escape? The deeper truth is what you fear the most." The voice echoed, twisting around them like the shadows themselves, searching for weakness. Sanders stole a glance back, just in time to see the form of the figure shift and distort. The creature's eyes glowed brighter, a ghastly light reflecting their deepest fears. He could feel its hunger for their despair, for the very essence of their souls. "Move!" Amanda screamed, her voice cutting through the tension as they barreled toward the flickering light that was now almost within reach as they dashed for the exit. Sanders felt himself hesitate, a force pulling him back. Something deep inside, that nagging feeling about their pasts. The truth mingled with shadow was fighting against his will to escape. Would acknowledging the truth truly mean facing down the darkness threatening to consume them all? In a split second, he decided. They were already in too deep. "Together, on 3, he shouted, spurring the group. 1, 2, 3. They leaped towards the light, the sudden rush of energy electrifying. Yet, as they hit the threshold, a burst of pain shot through Sanders' chest. He stumbled, eyes growing wide as he felt himself torn between the light and the encroaching darkness. And then, everything went black. Silence fell heavy, an eerie absence of sound, leaving only the pounding of their hearts ringing in his ears. Time warped in that moment. It could have been seconds or eternities as Sanders fought to regain control, his body frozen between two worlds. When the darkness finally released its grip, it revealed a new plane, a chilling void edged with possibilities and truths long buried. They stood on the precipice of revelation, but was the truth they found more horrifying than the shadows themselves? As Sanders caught his breath, the memories surged, fragments of laughter mixed with fears, glimmers of familiar faces, and a past he couldn't quite hold on to. What had they just stumbled into? And who would they become once the truth clawed its way to the surface? Sanders blinked hard, disoriented as the darkness pulled away like smoke, revealing the chilling remnants of their chaotic escape. They found themselves in a desolate space, an abandoned factory where the remnants of machinery loomed like ghostly sentinels in the dim light. Shadows danced around them, twisting and writhing with a mind of their own. Amanda gasped, clutching Sanders' arm as they stood together, hearts racing, breaths quickening. "Where are we?" she whispered, her voice trembling. This must be where it all ends," he replied, his words thick with both fear and a grim understanding. In front of them, the shadows began to coalesce into figures, those same twisted embodiments of their fears materializing with unholy purpose. Caleb and Marcus flanked Sanders and Amanda, their faces illuminated by the pale glow, mixing determination with another emotion that cut deeper: uncertainty. "Listen," Marcus said, his voice steady, yet there was a hint of something else, a desperate hope. "This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about facing whatever truth these shadows represent. And the truth is, Caleb added, his eyes reflecting the dim light, this place, it's a manifestation of our histories. We can't outrun it any longer. The air was thick with the chilling reminder that they were not alone. Sanders could feel the weight of their collective past pressing down on them, suffocating yet oddly comforting. We don't have to face it alone. Together, we can confront whatever darkness awaits. A low growl reverberated through the hollowed factory, signaling the shadows to rush forward. But instead of retreating, Sanders stepped forward, feeling that same bond unity in fear and resolve. Whatever you've come for, we're no longer just pieces for you to claim. We're the ones holding the power now. He shouted, the conviction echoing off the metal walls. Amanda took a deep breath, finding her courage in his words. We came here seeking the truth. No more lies. No more running. The swirling darkness hesitated, as if it contemplated the challenge thrown at its feet. And then it surged forward, wires and gears groaning under the pressure, tendrils flailing, ready to claim their prey. Sanders and Amanda, side by side, faced that wall of substance, their fears, failures, and regrets charging forward with wild strength. We fight together, he yelled, wind whipping around them as if the very universe willed their determination. The shadows lunged, but their combined energy erupted into a bright, warm light that burst forth from their union, their hopes and shared weaknesses braided into a collective force. It flickered, illuminating the grim space, pushing back the encroaching darkness momentarily. Hold on, Marcus yelled, grasping Amanda's hand tightly, declaring their connection as strong as steel. As they moved, the shadows twisted in response, howling as if the light scorched them, an agonizing sound that vibrated through the factory walls. The brightness wrapped around them, cocooning them as they drove deeper into their fears, pushing to understand the truths entwined within those grasping shadows. Then, paving their way through the chaos, their pasts flickered before them, memories laid bare, intertwining with visions of pain. The betrayal that had once cut deep, the ambition that had entangled everything, now transformed into clarity. They needed to own the choices that had led them here. With each step forward, those memories diminished into mere echoes. Understanding replaced anxiety, and as their voices joined in unity, the light grew brighter. We are stronger together, Sanders declared, the heat of empowerment roiling around them, shattering the grasp of despair. In a final surge, the shadows twisted and writhed violently as the light engulfed them, transforming the familiar faces of dread into radiant echoes of lost friends. Laughter filling the air, recognition and acceptance lighting the way forward. And just like that, their surroundings shifted. They found themselves standing in a sunlit glade, no shadows nearby, no menacing figures, only the warmth of sunlight cascading down, enveloping them with acceptance. Sanders felt a weight lift from his shoulders, a freedom they hadn't anticipated but desperately needed. Turning to Amanda, their shared connection glimmered in her eyes, and with a nod of solidarity, they stepped toward the brilliance of their new beginning. But perhaps, just perhaps, the shadows were not entirely gone. They would always be a reminder, a call to maintain their bonds against the darker forces lurking beyond. Let us not forget what brought us together, Caleb said, voice full of renewed determination as they gazed at the landscape of possibility ahead. Yeah, Marcus added, clearing the tension from his voice. If this journey taught me anything, it's that the truth can bind us as much as it can try to tear us apart. Together they took a step into the light, strengthened by the revelations that would guide their future, ready to write new chapters, unafraid of the shadows that might sometimes return. Messy, intricate, beautiful. This was their truth, still alive, groping through the dark, but never fully consumed by it. Now, here's the moment to get in on the action. You need to subscribe now to join this incredible journey, and smash that like button now to help keep the momentum going. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely must see this ending. Your engagement is the heartbeat of this channel.